for today. So in your packet, when you are done with your construction, you have to do a few things. The first one is the measuring identification worksheet. And when I look at my what do I do now list, after you're done with the final construction, it's going to say in red, measuring identification worksheet, and it's 10 points. On the measuring identification worksheet, I give you a picture of a ruler. I put dots above certain measurements, all right, just like I did up here, just like I did on your measuring practice sheet. So that's my point. Part 1 on your practice sheet, I give you a picture of a ruler, and that is full size. That's a full-scale ruler. I took a clear ruler, I put it on a copy machine, and I made a copy. So that is a real ruler, real measurements. So for part 1, you don't need a ruler. I gave you the ruler, and I put a dot above measurements. So if you look at number 1 on your practice sheet, I always like to put my finger or my pencil right on the 0, because that counts. That is a measurement. That's 0/16. Remember, we're going to be measuring in fractions when you're measuring in inches. Okay, so 0/16, that counts. So if I want to know what measurement number 1 is pointing at, I just put my finger or my pencil on 0, and if you know how to count, you know how to measure. It's 1, 2 lines over. So it's going to be 2/16. If I look at measurement number 2, I go back to my 0. I put my pen or pencil or my finger there and I just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 lines after the 0. It's going to be 5/16. Now I know it's 16ths because they take the whole inch, just like they take a whole centimeter, and they cut it into smaller slices. Well, if you count the number of slices from the 0 to the 1, starting at the 0, there would be 16. Well, 16/16 is 1 inch. That's how I know that every slice has to be 1/16. That's all you have to know when you're measuring in inches. If I'm measuring in the metric system, I don't have to get confused. I go from 0 to 1 centimeter. If I were to count the number of slices, there's 10, which means you're measuring in tenths when you're measuring in the metric system. That's why you can use decimals. So if you can count, you can measure. Right? But we're always going to be measuring in inches in here. And 99% of rulers take a whole inch and cut it into 16 slices. Now when you're younger, when you buy your first rulers or you're giving your first rulers in kindergarten, they might be 6-inch rulers, and they might just have the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 6. Then when you get a little more detailed, they just put in the halfway point. Then they might give you every 4th line. Right? Then they start getting a little more detailed as you're going along. Okay? So when you're on part 1, I give you the ruler. I want you to find the measurement as you go along and write the answer in the space provided, just like you're going to do for the measuring identification worksheet. So if you can do part 1 on the practice sheet, I don't know how you can't get a 10 out of 10 for your first graded assignment that has to come in when you're done with your construction. The next sheet that has to be done before we can launch your rockets outside is the ruler reading worksheet. And that's right up there on the board on our what do I do now list. This one I give you a bunch of lines, 10 lines, and you are going to need the ruler for this. So you got to make sure that you're measuring in inches. And I know either Mr. Blanchett said everything is measured in 16ths, no matter what. I'm always going to be using fractions, no matter what. Or I can just look at the 1 inch and I can count the number of slices. And there's 16 slices. But you got to make sure you're measuring from the inch side, not from the centimeter side. And if you turn it over to the centimeter side and you look, you count the number of slices between the 0 and the 1, there's only 10 of them. Okay, so we're measuring in inches. All you do is you got to put the 0 on the end of the line. That's one mistake kids make. You don't measure from the end of the ruler. Most good companies will not put the 0 at the end of the ruler because the ends of rulers get damaged. So that's why the 0 is usually put in, if it's a metal ruler or a plastic ruler or a wooden ruler. So make sure you're measuring from the 0. I can always tell if somebody's 1/16th off for every one of their answers, they measured from the end of the ruler, not from the 0. So you just put your 0 there. If I'm measuring on my actual measuring ruler reading worksheet, I go to the 3 and then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 6 lines after the 3. So I would write it 3 and 6/16. I don't want to see 54/16. All right, don't write it as an improper fraction. Write it as a mixed number. If you know how to reduce, you can reduce. I don't require you to. But hopefully if you know how, then go ahead. If it's 2/16, you could put 1/8. All right, but I want to teach those that don't know how to measure that it's as simple as being able to count. That's all it is. If I'm looking at this measurement right there, where that dot is, it's 1. So the first thing I would do is put a 1, and then I put my pen there, and it's 1, 2, 3. It'd be 1 and 3/16. That means it's 3 lines after the 1. It's so easy to measure. If I come up to here where my 2 is, I want to measure that dot. It's 2. Put my pen or pencil right there. 1, 2. 2 and 2/16. Remember, this line counts. That would be 2 and 0/16, or just 2 inches. Okay? So that's where part 2 comes in. Part 2, I give you 10 lines. I know it's smudged. The copy machine, for some reason, happens to be smudging when we're making copies. So do the best you can. I will give you 1/16 margin of error when you do this on some of them. Because when you make copies, the things change. Every time you use the copy machine, things change a little bit. So I do give you a little margin of error, but a 1/16 of an inch is a lot. So be careful. What I tell kids to do is to measure, put your answer, and then quickly remeasure it again. That 1 second it takes for you to remeasure that line and to double check, you can save yourself from making mistakes. Even though after you turn these sheets in to be graded, I'll pass them back to you and you can fix your mistakes. All right? But if you do that, you should always measure twice before you do any cutting or anything like that. All right? Those are the first 2 measuring assignments that need to be done. But the practice one is just for your benefit. So I don't care when you're done with this. After you check one of the 3 answer keys, I don't care if you throw it away. If you're satisfied and you know how to read the locations and measure the line distances, you can either put it in your folder or throw it away. And then you just pick up wherever you are in the process. If you're done with all of your construction, then you are ready to start on the measuring identification worksheet. All right? Good. Go.